what resources are there in the community that we can leverage to retain affordability. The most important are, there's a large federal program. It's the major producer of affordable housing in this country. It's called the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. Virginia is fortunate to have one of the best allocating agencies in the country. Very transparent, very ethical, very farsighted. They get to issue the use of those low-income housing tax credits for the entire state. Arlington's been very successful at positioning itself to be able to take advantage of that. APAH as an organization brings our expertise. That's one of the other pieces that we bring to our work, is we have to understand affordable housing finance and construction and design and land use and zoning. So we want to marry our knowledge of the community, our knowledge of the neighborhoods, our knowledge of what the needs are in Arlington with that expertise. That's considered a best practice in our industry. It's important to have a knowledge of complicated finance. This is not for the faint of heart, but it is also an opportunity for us to know who our community is. The history of some affordable housing is bringing in high-rise towers in the middle of rural Kansas. We don't want to do that. We want our housing to be appropriate for Arlington, both in who it serves, the built look it has, its interaction with the neighborhood. So identify the resources. Low-income housing tax credits is an important one. The Virginia Housing Development Authority allocates those tax credits, but they also have a financing arm, so we work with them closely to get both construction and permanent financing. They have a wonderful loan program. We work with Arlington County. Arlington County, in its wisdom, has set aside for now many years basically what is generically called in our industry a trust fund. In Arlington, it's called the Arlington Housing Investment Fund. They use funds from the county's general budget, allocate every year. Last year was about $4.5 million that they leverage with these other resources, including also commercial bank resources, that APAH will bring them a project and they'll say, what's our gap? What can we do with the tax credits, with the financing, and what's our gap? And they will help us come into a project and make it work. It has been boosted in the last few years because Arlington County also passed an ordinance that asks developers to either create on-site affordable, some people call it inclusionary zoning or inclusionary housing, or in lieu of that, if they don't want to do those units on site, to contribute to the same fund, the Arlington Housing Investment Fund. So the fund has really grown a lot. Many of the new developments that came in said, you know, this is too complicated. If I'm doing a condo project, I don't know how to do an affordable rental piece in the middle of my condo project. So it's been a good time for the fund. In many communities, they do not actually allow developers to waive out of doing the on-site. Montgomery County is one example of that. And I think it's great because what you can have is sort of a mix of housing. Private developments with new construction, with some affordable in them, and then also these mostly affordable projects which tend to be most successfully developed by nonprofits. And we can leverage the other funds. So, in any case, Arlington has not got access to that now. Virginia is a different state than Maryland. We don't always have the same rights under the Dillon Rule and those issues. Find the resources, find the real estate. An important part of our work is also finding real estate. We were fortunate as an organization. We've been around for 20 years, so a couple of our projects have involved redeveloping sites that we bought many years ago when the market was not as competitive. Arlington has really seen a lot of growth in the metro corridor, the Roslyn-Ballston corridor. We owned a property, an acre of land with 22 units on it, built in 1943. It was called the Roslyn Ridge Apartments. And through the benefit of the upzoning that happened in the 1960s as part of Arlington's Smart Growth Plan, that property was eligible to have a high-rise on it. So we worked with the community, got the entitlements and approvals, and now there's a 15-story building there called Park Roslyn, 238 units, of which 96 are affordable. It's totally invisible to anyone but a low-income person who has received a referral to come there and get access to the apartments, but otherwise you would normally rent a two-bedroom apartment there for $2,400 to $3,000 a month. But if you ask for an affordable apartment and you're eligible for it, it's $1,200 a month. So Finding the real estate is an important step. APAH had some real estate that it owned, so it's been able to redevelop it. We've also been looking at new acquisitions. We bought last year in a 1949 garden apartment complex, converted that. We're completely upgrading it. It hadn't had much of an investment in it. A lot of our existing, what we call market affordable units, are units that are basically been depreciating. They haven't had new investment, so they're low rent because that's what the market is for a building that has no air conditioning, very old electrical wiring, you know, during a rainstorm, water puddles up in the front door. So as part of our work, we are not only buying that property, but we will be completely revamping it, spending about $85,000 per unit, leveraging again all these sources we have to make it a quality place to live. And this is our mission, to provide quality, affordable housing that is a benefit not just to residents but also to the community. So when people look at our property that's called Buchanan Gardens in 2 years, what they'll see is, well, what they may not see is actually the underground storm system, the underground utilities, the brand new electrical wiring, the central heat and air conditioning. But whether they see it or not, what they'll be there is a property built for the long term. Not one that's on its last legs, but hopefully one that's the beginning of its new life cycle. So those are the main steps. Identify, acquisition again, another acquisition tool we're using now is the county issued a request for proposals on a piece of land they owned. The backside of the Arlington Mill Community Center. They didn't have a need for that space. They set aside an acre of land and they said, what can developers propose to put on top of that that would meet some of our affordable housing goals? Very innovative. That's also considered a best practice in the community. So we were very fortunate to be selected this October to put up a proposal for 122 new affordable units. And what's exciting about that is not only will that help to offset the loss of some of the other affordable units disappearing from the community, but because it's new construction, we're going to be able to put in a new model of supportive housing there. There's some households, particularly formerly homeless, that need different services, a little more intensive services, people with disabilities. So we will have a suite of units that'll have an on-site caregiver unit, and it will be fully accessible. So we can, in those situations, serve perhaps low-income seniors, children aging out of foster care, need a little more supervision. We're working with Arlington County to identify some hard-to-house populations, but with new construction, we can design it to serve them. So another big piece of the steps of affordable housing is, of course, doing the work. Going through the use permit process, that can take months, the entitlement process, getting the county to agree to what we have proposed for the new storm system, the new electrical wiring, the new units, the new windows, the permit process. That takes us almost a year. And then actually doing the construction. And in the case of an existing property, the good news is we already have a population we're serving, so we're preserving their affordable housing. The bad news is they have to often live through a construction process. So working out a plan to minimize their dislocation, keep them on site, keep them engaged in the property. If they have to move, help to coordinate that, try and find, in our case, units at our other properties, so if they're off site for a couple months, they can live continuously in an APAH property and then come back to that property fully renovated. We just had a meeting with our residents last week, and I was expecting them to sort of start to bail, that I don't want to stay here. It's 3 months of construction, the entire property will be torn up, and they are, to every person so far, very excited about what's going to happen. We showed them pictures of what the remodeled units will be like, which says a lot about Arlington too, which gets back to that first step, which is what's the need? The need is people want to live in a quality community like Arlington. Our schools, our parks, our social services. So if you can provide, if we can provide affordable housing in this community, really we're giving people stepping stones to improve all their lives. One of my favorite stories is the families that their kids have gone through Arlington public schools and maybe the parents never went to high school, and there are their children going on to college and professional degrees. They still speak Spanish or Amharic or some other language, but their children have this great opportunity, which is the American dream.